Hello everyone, Time to Grind here, and today I wanted to talk about a topic that's a little bittersweet. It has some good news, it has some bad news, and the good news, like the title of this video, is it seems like a lot of game companies are finally starting to shy away from loot boxes and the whole disgusting gambling tactics that we've been seeing in so many games. And whether that's because, they kept trying to push as far as they could, and then Star Wars Battlefront 2 just had the most outrageous pay-to-win gambling loot box model imaginable, and the bad publicity and just the shitstorm that started with that. Maybe it might be companies just not wanting to even get any resemblance to Star Wars Battlefront 2 like that was, or if some companies are just deciding, hey, maybe we'll just start doing microtransactions. People are apparently happy with them. And so that's good. As the way it seems, most games that are coming out are probably not going to contain loot boxes unless they want some really bad publicity. Obviously, games like Overwatch or Rainbow Six Siege that kind of already have an established loot box system probably won't get rid of loot boxes. Like Overwatch, apparently everyone is okay with loot boxes in Overwatch, and I was too at the beginning. I was brainwashed into that because they're like, oh, it's cosmetic only and all the future heroes and maps will be free and everything like that. And then you realize, like, it's just gambling. When you spend $70 in the first event like I did, the very first summer event, just because you wanted a single McCree skin, and eventually I got it, but after $70, you just kind of have to be like, okay, this is kind of scummy. And like I've said in other videos, I think the next kind of big system we're going to see is the compendium system in Fortnite. I'm actually a little, I'm okay with that system. But either way, kind of without going too much off the, point I'm trying to make, it seems like a lot of games that are coming out now, especially in 2018, aren't containing loot boxes, at least AAA title ones, most of them. And games like Overwatch that aren't going to make an Overwatch 2, it's just going to be Overwatch for years and years and years. I don't see them getting rid of loot boxes unless we see regulation happen. But if a lot of games are kind of stopped doing that, I feel like regulation might not be as important. But either way, fact is fact that we're starting to see a lot less loot boxes, and that's great because we don't have as much gambling in games, and we don't have we're not teaching kids to gamble and how fun gambling is, and we're not kind of preying on people with gambling and addictive personalities and stuff like that, and that's really, really good. But the bad news is that because developers and video game companies and shareholders and all that, especially for the AAA title market, because they can't make the outrageous amount of money that they were making on loot boxes, if they don't want the bad publicity that comes with loot boxes, but they still are going to want the money that they were making with loot boxes. So we're starting to see games that are coming out in 2018 that don't have loot boxes. They are having good old microtransactions. So if you don't remember, the era before the loot box was the era of the microtransactions. We had games that were just shoving microtransactions in everything. Even in single player games, you had like Deus Ex, you had Metal Gear Solid 5 that had microtransactions for no reason, and it felt like some of the gameplay, it purposely felt like the developers had to make the grinding in the game outrageous, so you might be tempted to buy the in-game currency or whatever with real money. And so Far Cry 5 is a perfect example of this. Came out this month. It doesn't have loot boxes, which is nice. I'm not saying it's not good that it doesn't have loot boxes, but it has microtransactions. And, in the game, you can unlock guns, and then you buy them with the in-game money, and then you can just get them at any point once you're at a gun shop for free if you've already bought it. And in previous Far Cries, it felt a lot easier to buy these guns, but in Far Cry 5, it feels like it was purposely made harder to buy the guns and to grind for the guns and stuff, in hopes that you'll just cave in and buy the silver bars, currency, and spend microtransaction money and stuff like that. And not only is that bad, because they're altering the gameplay to make it overall be a chore to play the game. So what they're saying is, hey, we made this game that's supposed to be fun, and you're supposed to buy the game because it's fun, but if you don't want to play the game, we'll let you pay us to not play the game. Which, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's true. They're like saying, hey, if you don't want to play our game that, you bought to play, and you don't want to play it to be able to buy these guns, you can just pay us to not play the game, and then we'll just give it to you straight up. So that's a little ridiculous, especially when, because if they don't change the gameplay to make it tempting to buy microtransactions, then it feels like there's no point of the microtransactions being there. And although it's nice that you're not being tempted, it's kind of like, why are you here? You're just a pointless thing trying to make money. But then if the gameplay is altered to try to, you know, tempt you to buy microtransactions, then it's even worse, because the gameplay has been worsened in hopes that you'll spend more money, and it's just not fun. And on top of that, obviously we saw some game companies, you know, even with loot boxes, they, you know, just not only double dipped, not even triple dipped, but, you know, quad dipped, or whatever you want to call it, by having loot boxes, season passes, microtransactions, and every little different scummy payment model they could. They tried to do it all. And but some developers kind of, once they had loot boxes, they kind of were following what Blizzard did with Overwatch, and they're like, okay, we'll give all the future content for free, just there'll be these cosmetic loot boxes. And that's pretty, you know, although it sucks to have loot boxes, it's nice to just not have to worry about buying DLC or season passes or anything like that. But because they can't make the outrageous money they were making with loot boxes, we're kind of going back to that. You know, Far Cry 5 has its season pass, and on top of that, it has on the store, whether you're on the Steam store or all this stuff, there's like multiple different editions, like every game has to have. You got your standard edition of whatever game, you have, you know, the gold edition, then you have the platinum edition, then you have like a collector's diamond, you know, mega edition that has a statue and a, you know, soundtrack and stuff like that. And some of the, like, physical, you know, kind of editions, I can, you know, I bought the Overwatch, like, special, you know, collector's edition that came with a statue and everything like that, and that was cool. I don't feel like, I don't really regret that. But, you know, having 4 different digital versions of the game and having to look at, like, a checklist and, like, a chart and be like, okay, well, the standard edition, you know, comes with the base game, check. And then it comes with, you know, this, check. But then the gold edition, see, it comes with all these skins and an exclusive gun that you can't find anywhere else. And you gotta, like, analyze this chart to just see what edition you want to buy. Because, you know, just buying a game isn't fun anymore. We have to analyze charts to see, you know, what kind of edition we want. And that's a little ridiculous. But, you know, before, I feel like what really happened is because in terms of, like, the era of the loot box, you know, we had kind of loot boxes that a lot of, you know, people, myself included, unfortunately, were okay with, you know, because, like, in CSGO and, you know, Dota, you could sell those items and at least they had a monetary value. It definitely made it more gambling because, you know, some people were trying to buy cases to try to win a $300, you know, knife, but at least you could cash out. Then you had Overwatch where they're like, okay, it's cosmetic only, you can still earn them in the game, and we're just going to make it where, you know, all maps and heroes and stuff are free in the future. So that was kind of okay. And slowly, you know, game companies just made it scummier and scummier and scummier to the point where we had Star Wars Battlefront 2, which had its entire progression system based around a level up card pack, you know, loot box gambling system, and that was not okay. And that's when, you know, the, you know, community in the gaming industry and fans kind of revolted and were like, no, this isn't okay, and everyone had to take a step back. And, you know, Star Wars Battlefront 2, they couldn't end up doing that. And I feel like we were so close to that happening in the microtransaction era. You know, people were starting to really get fed up, you know, with games just, you know, shoving microtransactions in their game just to have them. But then loot boxes happened, and people were like, okay, you know, at least some companies were like, okay, we'll do this. And if they did it the way Overwatch did at the beginning, some people were kind of tricked into liking it, like I was. So overall, I feel what I'm trying to say with this video is, although it's nice that loot boxes are gone and we don't have gambling issues and we don't have kids, you know, spending all of their parents' money trying to get the coolest Reaper skin, and we don't have, you know, things feeding on and preying on people with addictive personalities, that's nice. But because we're not doing that, we're having to go back to microtransactions. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, this game doesn't have loot boxes, that's good. And they're okay with it having microtransactions and season passes and DLCs because of the fact that it just doesn't have loot boxes. But it's like, you weren't okay with microtransactions before, but now that, you know, the some games have loot boxes, you're like, oh, well, this game doesn't have loot boxes, it's fine. But, you know, people need to realize that microtransactions are still scummy, and we really need to be, you know, watching out for it rather than being like, oh, thank God it doesn't have loot boxes, you know, because that's what the industry wants. They want us to be okay with microtransactions because at the very least it doesn't have loot boxes. And loot boxes are bad, but so are microtransactions. And that's kind of where I want to end this video, just kind of with that point. But, you know, I definitely would love to hear your guys' opinions in it. You know, if you guys personally are okay with, you know, microtransactions, if they're cosmetic only, or, you know, kind of stuff like that. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts. I really love, you know, talking with you guys, and, you know, half the fun of making these videos is the conversation after the video has already been uploaded with you guys. But if you enjoyed this video, also consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to see more content. It helps out this channel immensely. And like always, guys, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and see you guys next time.